Dread Before Dawn, a chilling supernatural thriller.
Chapter 1. The Dare. The van jerked to a stop on the narrow dirt road, kicking up dust that settled like a ghostly veil over the tall, looming gates of Hillgrove Cemetery. The girls in the back seat exchanged wary glances as the headlights lit up the iron bars, casting twisted shadows over the gravestones beyond. Mia's stomach tightened as she took in the dark silhouettes of headstones against the night sky. "All right, pledges. End of the line." Cassidy, a senior sorority sister with a smirk that radiated both confidence and a hint of cruelty, looked over her shoulder at the 4 freshmen huddled together in the back. Her eyes glinted as she added, "Time to prove you're tough enough for Alpha Theta." The 4 girls exchanged uneasy glances. Riley, the self-appointed leader of their small group, known for her tough exterior and fearless attitude, rolled her eyes and slid out of the van first, her expression defiant. Mia, Riley's best friend and the steady, observant one who preferred to stay out of the limelight, was next. She lingered a moment, feeling the weight of Cassidy's expectant stare before taking a deep breath and following Riley. Behind her, Sarah clutched her phone tightly, her face pale as she hesitated. The most studious of the group, Sarah's cautious nature made her visibly anxious about the dare. Beside her was Amber, a sensitive and creative soul with a love for the arts, who bit her lip and pushed her hair back, her nerves clear as she cast a last look of trepidation toward Cassidy. With an exaggerated sigh, Cassidy leaned against the van and grinned. "What's the holdup, ladies?" Another sister, Katrina, leaned out from the passenger seat, a mocking smile spreading across her face. "Here's the deal, girls. You make it through the night in Hillgrove and we'll be back at 7 a.m. to pick you up." She paused, smirking as her voice turned syrupy and sarcastic. "That is, if you're still alive." The other sisters laughed, the sound echoing through the dark cemetery as they watched the pledges with a mixture of excitement and amusement. Mia swallowed, her throat tightening with anticipation. Her eyes flickered to the cemetery gate, looming like a jaw ready to snap shut behind them. She'd heard whispers about Hillgrove's hauntings, but she'd brushed them off as campus rumors, until now. "Are you serious?" Sarah stammered, looking up at Megan with wide eyes. "We're supposed to spend the whole night here?" Cassidy sighed, crossing her arms as though Sarah's hesitation was somehow beneath her. "Look, this is Alpha Theta tradition. You want to be part of the sisterhood? Then you need to prove you're not scared of a few graves." "Or ghosts," Megan added with a smirk, waggling her fingers in a mock-scary gesture. "Hillgrove's got some interesting history, you know." She leaned forward, lowering her voice to a whisper that still somehow carried over the cool night air. "People say the dead don't rest here. They get lonely." Cassidy laughed, the sound cruel as she tapped her watch. "So, if you're still around to tell us about it tomorrow, we'll know you're one of us." Riley snorted, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "Fine. It's just one night. Let's do this." She strode forward, showing no fear as she swung her backpack over her shoulder. Mia looked at Sarah, who was still staring wide-eyed at the cemetery entrance, her face pale. She stepped closer, giving her roommate a reassuring nod. "We'll stick together," she murmured, hoping her voice sounded braver than she felt. "Ah, look at that!" Megan called out, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "How cute! They think sticking together is going to help them." She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing with mock sincerity. "Trust me, girls. They know you're here. You're in their territory now." Mia felt her heart pound as she looked back at the darkened graveyard, across the tombstones, an unease settling in her chest. Cassidy revved the engine, her grin wide as she called out one last taunt. "Good luck, ladies. Hope you enjoy your night with Hillgrove's finest." The doors slammed shut, and the van peeled off, leaving the 3 girls in a cloud of dust that mingled with the low mist creeping across the cemetery grounds. Silence enveloped them as the taillights disappeared around a bend, and in the sudden quiet, the rustle of the wind through the trees sounded unnaturally loud. "Okay, let's just get through this," Riley muttered, her voice breaking the tension as she looked at the others with a smirk. "We'll show them we're not scared of some dumb urban legend." Mia nodded, taking a deep breath as she looked up at the gates and the rows of tombstones beyond. They were alone now, completely at the mercy of the dark, endless graveyard and whatever secrets it held. Riley took the first step forward, but Mia hesitated, feeling a cold dread settle into her bones as she thought of Cassidy's parting words. "If you're still alive?" Clutching her jacket tight, Mia squared her shoulders and followed her friends through the gates. It was the kind of night that made every shadow seem sharper, every sound seem louder, and every secret seem darker. The wind whistled through the ancient oaks that bordered Hillgrove Cemetery, carrying with it a chill that crept under the skin. As the small group of freshman girls gathered at the old graveyard, an uneasy tension hung in the air. "This is ridiculous," Sarah muttered, crossing her arms and glancing around, clearly unimpressed. "I mean, what does spending a night in a cemetery prove anyway? That we're, what? Brave enough to freeze in the dark?" Amber let out a sarcastic laugh. "Yeah, right? Oh look, they spent a night with a bunch of dusty old gravestones. Now they're ready to be alpha thetas." She rolled her eyes. "I seriously don't get what this has to do with being in a sorority." Mia nodded, hugging her arms closer as another gust of wind whipped around them. "Honestly, Cassidy and Megan are probably just bored," she murmured. "It's like they wanted to find the stupidest thing they could think of." Riley scoffed, her tone dismissive as she pressed on ahead. "They just want to scare us, that's all. It's a cheap trick. Come sunrise, we'll be back at the house laughing about it. And they'll have wasted a perfectly good night's sleep trying to freak us out." Sarah hesitated, glancing back at the path where the van had driven off, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know, though. Did you see how serious they were? It was like they actually believed that stuff about Hillgrove." "Please," Riley said, her tone clipped. "They don't believe anything. They just want us to think it's haunted so we'll freak out. And I'm not giving them the satisfaction." She paused, looking at the others with a hint of her usual grin. "Besides, we're smarter than that. It's just a cemetery, and I'm not about to let Cassidy and Megan's bad horror movie routine get to me." Amber shrugged, though Mia could tell she wasn't fully convinced. "Fine, but let's at least stick together, okay? I mean, if it's all such a dumb dare, there's no point in getting all heroic and wandering off, right?" Mia exchanged a glance with Sarah, who gave a quick nod. "Agreed. Let's just get through this and get out of here." But as they stood at the cemetery's entrance, an uneasy silence settled over them, the weight of Cassidy's words echoing in each of their minds. "If you're still alive." The wind picked up, rustling the leaves and sending a shiver down their spines as they took the first steps into the heart of Hillgrove. Mia stood off to the side, hugging her arms tightly across her chest. She was the new girl, the transfer from out of state, and she wasn't sure why she had agreed to this. Maybe it was the need to fit in, or maybe it was the unspoken pressure to prove she wasn't afraid. But now, standing here, staring into the looming darkness of the cemetery, the hair on the back of her neck stood on end. "Why this place?" Mia asked, trying to mask the nervous tremor in her voice. "Local tradition," said Amber, another sorority girl, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Every year, freshmen are dared to spend the night in Hillgroves. You stay until dawn. You prove you're tough enough. It's a rite of passage. Simple as that." "What they didn't tell you," Riley chimed in, her grin widening, "is that this place is cursed." The other girls giggled, but Mia didn't join in. Something about the way Riley said it felt wrong, like there was truth behind the joke. She looked at the weathered gravestones jutting out from the overgrown weeds and noticed how the earth seemed to shift and sink in places, as if it had been disturbed more recently than it should have been. "What do you mean, cursed?" Mia asked, unable to shake the growing sense of dread. Riley's eyes glinted in the moonlight. "Legend has it, anyone caught here past 3 a.m. never makes it out. They say the dead rise from their graves and drag you down with them." She chuckled, but her laugh was hollow. "That's just a story, right?" Sarah, the quietest of the group, asked, her voice wavering. Riley shrugged. Maybe. But then again, would you really want to find out? The group went silent for a moment, the weight of Riley's words settling over them like a shroud. Mia nervously swallowed, her throat dry. She had heard enough urban legends to know they were mostly nonsense, but something about this place, something about the cemetery made the stories feel real. Okay, girls, enough scaring the new girl, Amber said, trying to lighten the mood. Let's just get this over with. Yeah, Mia agreed, forcing herself to sound braver than she felt. It's just one night. But even as she said it, her gaze drifted to the old iron gates of the graveyard, slightly ajar, as though inviting them in. A gust of wind pushed the gates open a little wider, the creak echoing through the stillness. One by one, the girls stepped into the cemetery, their laughter fading as they moved deeper into the gloom. Mia lingered at the entrance, casting one last glance at the street behind her, illuminated by the faint glow of the campus lights. For a moment, she thought about turning back, about quitting while she still could. But the thought of being labeled a coward was worse. Taking a deep breath, she followed them in. They reached the center of the graveyard, where a large, weathered mausoleum stood like a silent sentinel. Riley pointed to it with a grin. Here. A perfect spot for us to set up camp. The others followed her lead, dropping their bags on the cold, hard ground. Mia lingered near the edge of the group, her eyes scanning the distant graves, watching for any sign of movement. Relax, Amber said, sitting down and pulling out her phone. It's just a night in a creepy graveyard. What's the worst that could happen? But Mia couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The legend, the cursed cemetery. It all felt too real. And now, standing here in the middle of it, she couldn't ignore the gnawing sense of dread building inside her. As the wind whistled through the ancient trees, Mia thought she heard something, faint, barely audible, like a distant whisper carried on the breeze. She turned, scanning the graves once more. Nothing moved, but she could feel it now, deep in her bones. They weren't alone. Chapter 2. Midnight Whispers. Hours had passed since they first entered the cemetery, and the pale moon was hanging high in the sky, casting an eerie light across the tombs. The initial thrill of the dare long since faded. The night stretched on, tense and unyielding, as if each passing minute was intent on weighing them down with cold dread. What had begun as reckless laughter bouncing off the mossy gravestones had quieted into uneasy silence. Now, the girls sat huddled together in a loose circle, their backs to the mausoleum's cold stone wall, clutching their jackets as the air grew icier, the chill seeping into their bones. Mia pulled her jacket tighter, shivering not just from the biting cold, but from the oppressive atmosphere that seemed to settle heavily around them. The cemetery felt different, as if the very ground beneath them was watching, holding its breath, waiting. Every whisper of the wind through the skeletal branches, every rustle of dead leaves, sounded amplified, each noise lingering far too long in the quiet night. Sarah shifted closer to Mia, glancing down at her phone, her fingers trembling as she unlocked the screen. "How much longer?" she whispered, as if speaking too loudly might summon something lurking in the dark. The screen blinked to life, casting eerie blue shadows over her face as she checked the time. 10:15 p.m. It's not even midnight yet, and we still have to make it past 3 a.m., she muttered, her voice barely more than a breath. 3 a.m.? Amber echoed, her voice muffled by the scarf pulled tight around her face. She frowned, looking between the others. I thought they said we had to last until 7 a.m. Cassidy said she'd pick us up then. Amber's words wavered, tinged with confusion and a hint of uncertainty. Riley scoffed, rolling her eyes. Yeah, 3 a.m. is when the dead are supposedly supposed to rise or whatever. But we know that's just some stupid legend, right? We only have to make it to 7 a.m. until they come to pick us up. All we need to do is keep ourselves from freezing or freaking out. She tried to sound confident, but her voice faltered just enough for Mia to catch. Amber nodded, too quickly, as though repeating it would make it feel true. Exactly, she said, tugging her coat tighter around her. Just a few more hours, and we'll be laughing about how ridiculous this was. Sarah pulled her jacket closer, her gaze darting nervously to the shadows that pooled between the gravestones, stretching into endless dark shapes. Right. Just a few hours. Nothing spooky, just cold, she said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her voice was trembling, each word punctuated by her shallow breaths that fogged in the frigid air. Mia joined in, nodding along, but the words felt empty as she glanced back toward the tombstones looming around them. The reassurance her friends tried to offer seemed thin, like a layer of frost that would melt at the slightest warmth. A strange heaviness seemed to hang over the cemetery, thickening the air as though it had grown denser with each passing minute. She wanted to believe it, to laugh with them, but the silence pressed in, amplifying every sound and shadow. Amber tried to shrug off the chill that seemed to settle in her bones. I mean, come on. It's not like anything's going to happen. We're just sitting in a creepy old graveyard. Nothing more. A gust of wind rustled through the ancient oaks, whistling between the stones as it cut through their small huddle. The trees' shadows stretched, claw-like over the ground as the wind faded, leaving behind a silence that felt somehow wrong. They all fell quiet, and for a brief moment, the weight of their words seemed to settle uncomfortably over them, as if even the night were listening. Her casual tone didn't match her expression. Mia could see how tightly Amber gripped her knees, the way her eyes darted quickly from shadow to shadow, trying to convince herself of her own words. The reassurance was thin, like a film stretched over growing fear, and Mia knew Amber was just as on edge as the rest of them. Mia forced herself to nod, but her thoughts drifted as an uneasiness churned low in her stomach. Her gaze wandered to one of the older gravestones a few feet away, half obscured by tangled vines and weeds. The stone was ancient, worn so smooth that the name was almost illegible. A shiver trickled down her spine as she stared at it, the vines clinging to the stone like fingers determined to erase the memory of whoever lay beneath. It was as if the earth itself was devouring their existence, swallowing them into silence. A sharp rustling sound cut through the quiet, and Mia jolted, her heart leaping into her throat. She whipped her head toward the sound, her eyes wide as she scanned the shadows between the gravestones. A figure, something small, quick, flitted from one tombstone to another. She felt her pulse quicken, her breath catching. "Oh my God!" Sarah gasped, clutching Mia's arm. "Did you see that?" The other girls froze, following Mia's gaze into the darkness, their breaths held as they listened for any sign of movement. The wind had died, leaving only a dreadful silence that pressed in on them, thick and suffocating. "What?" Amber asked, her voice tense. "I didn't see anything." "I swear I saw something," Mia murmured, her heart pounding. She'd seen a shape, moving stealthily between the graves, but as her eyes strained to make out anything in the shadows, there was nothing. Just the tombstones, and the twisted, reaching branches of the trees above. Riley snorted, a harsh, brittle sound that broke the silence. "It's probably your imagination. We're in a graveyard, Mia. Of course it's spooky." Even as she said it, Mia noticed the way Riley's shoulders were tense, her bravado slipping. She too kept glancing into the dark, as if something might materialize from the shadows if she looked away. The doubt and unease in her eyes betrayed her words. A few beats of silence passed, thick with tension, as they all held their breath, waiting. But no movement came. No sound broke the quiet, just the relentless, eerie stillness of Hillgrove pressing in on them. Then, another noise. A soft rustling, like something small scurrying through the dead leaves. The girls jumped, their heads snapping toward the sound, as it grew louder, moving closer. Mia's heart raced, a thud in her ears, as her gaze locked onto the shadows just a few feet away. The leaves rustled again, and a small shape emerged from behind a tombstone, its fur glinting in the faint moonlight. A black cat. How poetic. Its golden eyes glinted in the dark as it stared at them, unblinking, as if amused by the frightened expressions on their faces. Mia let out a shaky laugh, relief washing over her. Oh my God. It's just a cat. Amber exhaled sharply, shaking her head. Seriously? We're getting spooked by a cat now? Sarah gave a nervous laugh, but her fingers were still clutched tightly around Mia's arm. I don't know what I thought. Riley chuckled, though there was an edge to it, brittle and hollow. See? It's just a graveyard, guys. Let's not lose it over every little sound, okay? But even as they tried to laugh it off, the unease settled back in, colder and sharper than before. The cat slipped away into the darkness, and with its departure, the silence deepened, more menacing somehow, as though the graveyard was swallowing the sound, reclaiming its eerie calm. They huddled closer together, their backs against the mausoleum, as if its cold stone offered any real protection. Mia's skin prickled, and she glanced at the gravestone she had been staring at earlier, the one wrapped in vines. The shadows around it seemed thicker, darker, like they were pressing closer. And then, just as she was beginning to think it was her imagination, a new sound broke the quiet. It was faint, almost imperceptible at first, but unmistakable. The slow, deliberate crunch of footsteps on gravel. Mia's heart clenched as she held her breath, her ears straining to follow the sound. Each step was measured, purposeful, like someone, or something, was slowly drawing closer. Sarah's eyes widened and her voice dropped to a terrified whisper. Did you hear that? Mia nodded, her throat dry. She could feel it now, an undeniable presence moving through the graveyard. The footsteps grew louder, punctuated by the unsettling scrape of something being dragged across the ground. Riley stood up abruptly, her face pale as she scanned the shadows. It's probably just some drunk frat boys trying to scare us, she muttered, but her voice lacked conviction. They heard we were out here and thought it'd be funny to mess with us. Mia wanted to believe her, but the footsteps were too slow, too deliberate. They weren't the careless, stumbling steps of drunken pranksters. They sounded cautious, almost predatory. Let's just stick together, okay? Mia said, her voice tighter than she'd intended. No wandering off. Amber and Sarah nodded quickly, huddling even closer. Even Riley, who normally thrived on her own bravado, looked uneasy now. Her gaze flicked back toward the mausoleum, her earlier confidence unraveling as another sound, a low, grating groan, echoed through the night, as if something heavy was dragging across the ground nearby. What the hell is that? Amber's voice shook, her grip on her scarf tightening as she scanned the shadows. Riley shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. Probably just the wind. But none of them believed her. The wind had stopped hours ago, leaving only the stillness of the graveyard and the soft, deliberate crunch of footsteps that seemed to circle them, closing in. Mia's breath came in shallow gasps. Her eyes darted back to the gravestone wrapped in vines, its inscription lost in shadow. The way the plants clung to it, twisting and coiling, seemed unnatural, as though they were grasping desperately at something beneath. And then, just at the edge of her vision, she saw it. A shadow, moving between the graves. It was closer this time, almost close enough to touch. Mia's heart slammed against her ribs as she reached out, grabbing Riley's arm. There! She hissed urgently, pointing toward the shape in the distance. Riley followed her gaze, her face paling as she narrowed her eyes, searching the darkness. But before she could say a word, the footsteps stopped. A deafening silence settled over them, thicker and more oppressive than before. For a long, agonizing moment, none of them moved. Mia held her breath, her muscles taut, waiting for the next sound, the next sign that they were not alone. Then, from somewhere just beyond their circle, a new sound emerged. A soft, almost imperceptible whisper, as if the graves themselves were speaking. It drifted toward them on the still air, too faint to understand but undeniably there. Amber's face drained of color, her voice shaking as she asked, "Did you hear that?" Riley stood rooted to the spot, her eyes wide. I heard it." The whisper came again, clearer this time, chilling and fragmented, Impossible to fully comprehend, but unmistakably real. Mia strained to catch the words, but they eluded her, dissolving into the night like a dark secret shared only with the dead. A cold shiver coursed through Mia's veins as she gripped Sarah's hand tightly, her fear so palpable it felt like a weight pressing down on her. Whatever was out there, whatever was watching them, wasn't human. She didn't know what to say, but her mind was screaming only one thing. "We need to get out of here," Mia whispered, her voice trembling. But before they could make a move, another sound ripped through the silence, closer this time, louder, a scraping, dragging noise like nails clawing through dirt. The girls froze, their wide eyes staring into the dark void around them. Something was coming. Chapter 3: The Witching Hour. The atmosphere in the cemetery shifted the moment the clock struck 3, each heavy chime resonating across the silent campus like a death knell. The sound echoed off the ancient tombstones, reverberating in the cold, still air, as if the earth itself were holding its breath. Mia's muscles tensed involuntarily, every nerve on edge, her senses tuned to every shadow and sound, waiting for something, anything, to happen. And then it did. The air thickened, pressing down on them with the weight of centuries, as though the cemetery were waking up after an eternity of silence. The girls sat frozen in a circle, their breath visible in thin white clouds against the darkness, their faces pale, their eyes wide and darting around at every subtle movement. Mia's pulse quickened as her chest tightened with the anticipation of some unseen terror. The wind that had been softly rustling the branches above suddenly stopped, plunging the cemetery into an unnatural silence, an oppressive stillness that seemed far more sinister than the howling gusts. "Do you feel that?" Mia whispered, her voice barely audible, as if the air had turned thick enough to swallow sound. Amber gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod, her face drained of color. "Something's wrong," she murmured, her voice flat, as though any inflection might provoke whatever waited in the dark. A low rumble, so faint it could have been mistaken for her imagination, vibrated through the ground beneath them. Mia's heart raced as the ground seemed to tremble ever so slightly, as if something ancient, something buried deep, had stirred. "Did you feel that?" Sarah asked, her voice quivering, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. "Please tell me I'm not imagining it." "No," Mia breathed, forcing herself to stand, her legs shaky as she took in the graves surrounding them. "You're not." The ground beneath one of the older tombstones began to shift, the soil pulsing, sinking and heaving in waves, as though something just below the surface were trying to claw its way free. Mia's heart pounded as she stared at the earth, frozen, unable to believe what she was seeing. Riley, who had always thrived on being the unshakable leader, the boldest in the room, slowly rose to her feet. Her usual confidence shattered. She took a hesitant step back, her voice shaking as she tried to rationalize what was happening. "Okay, this isn't funny anymore. Someone's messing with us. They have to be." Mia's gaze snapped to Riley, her voice barely more than a whisper. "You think this is a prank?" She pointed to the graves, the shifting, trembling earth beneath them. "Who would do this?" Amber's face went ashen as she stumbled backward, her voice thin and brittle. "What the hell is happening?" she choked, her hand covering her mouth as her gaze darted between the shifting soil and the tombstones around them. Mia's instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet felt glued to the ground, her mind struggling to make sense of the impossible. The low, groaning sound that had been faint earlier now grew louder, surrounding them, coming from all directions, as though the earth itself was coming alive. Then, suddenly, the soil shifted violently, and a headstone near them tipped forward, the earth beneath it heaving, as though something buried deep below was clawing its way up. Mia's stomach twisted as she stumbled back, unable to tear her gaze away. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, clutching Mia's arm tightly. "This can't be happening. It's not real. It can't be real." A soft, chilling whisper drifted through the stillness, carried on a wind that had suddenly returned, its voice cold, inhuman, cutting through the silence with a haunting clarity. "Leave." Mia's blood ran cold as the word pierced the night. It was so quiet and yet so distinct, as though it had been spoken directly into her ear. She spun around, searching, but there was nothing there. Just the graves, just the dark. And then, the earth broke open. The first skeletal hand clawed its way through the soil, decayed and skeletal, the flesh blackened and shriveled where it still clung to the bones. The fingers flexed and twitched, testing their strength, moving with a grotesque life as though waking from a centuries-long slumber. The girls screamed in unison, the sound tearing through the quiet night as they scrambled to their feet. But more hands were emerging, one by one, clawing through the earth, skeletal and rotting, their bony fingers reaching out as if desperate to escape their eternal prison. "Oh no! No, no, no!" Amber cried, backing up into Riley, her face twisted in horror. "This isn't real! This can't be real!" The whispers grew louder, no longer one voice but a twisted, nightmarish chorus rising from the ground, chanting in a chilling rhythm. "Stay with us. Stay with us. Stay with us." Riley's bravado shattered. "Screw this! I'm not sticking around!" she shouted, her voice cracking with panic. Without waiting for the others, she bolted toward the iron gates, her feet pounding against the uneven ground. "Wait!" Mia shouted after her, but Riley was already sprinting through the maze of headstones, her panic contagious. The others followed in a frenzy, their screams echoing in the night as they tripped over roots and fallen branches, desperate to escape the nightmare unfolding around them. But the cemetery had other plans. As Mia and the others reached the gate, they found it shut tight. The iron bars, which had been slightly ajar when they entered, were now locked, the rusted hinges groaning as they slammed closed with a force that shook the ground. Riley reached it first, yanking on the bars with all her strength, her face contorted in terror. "No, no, no!" Riley screamed, her hands gripping the cold iron until her knuckles turned white. "It's locked!" Mia reached the gate moments later, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. She threw herself against the iron, but it didn't budge. It was as if the cemetery itself had trapped them, sealing them in with the rising dead. Behind them, the ground continued to crack open. More skeletal forms emerged, their hollow eyes glowing faintly in the darkness, their decayed limbs moving with unnatural stiffness. The stench of decay filled the air, thick and suffocating, and the whispers. They were relentless, growing louder and louder with every passing second. Amber sobbed, clawing at the gate with trembling hands. "It's not supposed to be real! This isn't real!" But Mia knew it was real. The weight of the curse pressed down on her, suffocating her with its ancient malice. They had been warned. Don't stay past 3 a.m. But they hadn't listened. And now, the dead wanted them. Riley pounded her fists against the gate, her voice shrill with terror. "Help! Somebody help us!" The ground behind them shook violently, a deep, rumbling noise tearing through the cemetery. Mia turned just in time to see the earth split open beneath the largest grave. The figure that emerged was unlike the others. It was taller, its skeletal form draped in tattered burial clothes, a crown of dirt and rot clinging to its skull. Its hollow eyes glowed brighter than the rest, two cold, glowing orbs that locked onto Mia with a hunger that made her skin crawl. It stretched out its bony arm, reaching toward them, its fingers curled in anticipation. And as it did, the other corpses began to shuffle forward, their hollow mouths hanging open, emitting only that same eerie, whispering chant, "Stay with us. Forever." Mia's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. She grabbed Riley by the arm, yanking her away from the gate. "We can't stay here," she shouted, her voice trembling with fear. "We need to move, now." "But where?" Riley cried, her voice breaking with panic. Mia glanced around wildly, searching for an escape. Her eyes landed on the small, run-down caretaker's shed near the far edge of the cemetery. It was barely visible in the moonlight, but it was their only option. If they could just reach it, maybe they could barricade themselves inside and hold out until morning. "There, the shed. Go!" Mia shouted, pushing Riley in its direction. The girls didn't need to be told twice. They sprinted across the cemetery, dodging graves and low-hanging branches as the groans of the dead grew louder behind them. Mia's breath came in ragged gasps as she risked a glance over her shoulder. The corpses were gaining on them, their skeletal hands reaching out, desperate to drag them back into the cold earth. The shed loomed ahead, its door hanging open as if inviting them in. But Mia knew this wasn't an invitation. It was a last chance. They reached the shed just as the dead closed in. Riley threw herself through the door, and Mia was right behind her, slamming the door shut with a deafening bang. The girls collapsed against the walls, gasping for air, their hearts pounding in their chests. But Mia knew they weren't safe yet. The night was far from over, and dawn was still hours away. Chapter 4. The Dead Weight. The shed door slammed behind them with a thud that echoed through the tiny, cramped space. Mia pressed her back against the wood, panting, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she forced the flimsy latch into place. The others huddled close, their faces pale and drawn, the horror of what they had just witnessed still painted across their expressions. Amber sank to the floor, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees as she rocked back and forth, muttering incoherently. Riley stood frozen near a grimy window, staring out into the dark graveyard with wide, terrified eyes. Her hand trembled as she pointed to the gravestones outside. "They're out there," Riley whispered, her voice barely audible. "They're waiting for us." Mia pushed herself away from the door, her body shaking from adrenaline and fear. She glanced around the small shed, her mind racing as she tried to figure out what to do next. It was a caretaker's shed, cluttered with old tools and broken gardening equipment. But there was nothing here that could protect them from what was outside. The walls were thin, and the only thing between them and the dead was a weak wooden door that rattled with the slightest gust of wind. She knew it wouldn't hold if the corpses decided to break in. "We can't stay here," Mia said, her voice shaky but determined. "This shed won't keep them out." "Where are we supposed to go?" Sarah croaked, still sitting in the corner, her eyes wide and glassy with fear. "They're all around us. There's no way out." Mia paced the small room, her mind spinning. "There has to be a way. We just need to keep moving until dawn. If we can last until sunrise—" "Sunrise?" Amber interrupted, her voice rising in panic. "That's hours away. We'll never make it." "We have to try," Mia insisted, her voice stronger now. "We can't just sit here and wait for them to break in." Outside, the soft groaning of the dead grew louder, closer. Mia glanced toward the window where Riley stood, staring out into the darkness. A thick fog had begun to roll in from the edge of the cemetery, creeping through the graves like a slow-moving tide. And through that fog, Mia could see them. The dead, shambling figures moving in and out of the mist, their empty eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. The whispers were louder now, more distinct. "Come with us. Stay with us. Forever." Riley pressed her hand to the window, her breath fogging up the glass. "They're getting closer," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They're going to get in." Mia felt a surge of panic rising in her chest, but she forced it down. She had to think, had to find a way to keep them alive. There was no going back to the gate, it was locked, and even if it wasn't, there was no way they could outrun the dead. The shed was barely enough protection, but at least it gave them time to figure something out. Suddenly there was a loud thud against the door. The girls jumped in unison, their breath catching as they turned toward the sound. Mia could hear the slow, deliberate scraping of something heavy being dragged across the outside of the shed. The door rattled again, harder this time, as if something, or someone, was testing the strength of the latch. Amber whimpered, pressing her hands over her ears. "Make it stop. Make it stop." "Shh," Mia hissed, pressing a finger to her lips. She moved toward the window, her eyes scanning the fog outside. The dead were still moving through the cemetery, but they were no longer wandering aimlessly. They were converging on the shed, drawn to the girls like moths to a flame. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Stay with us!" A sudden crash echoed through the shed as something heavy slammed into the door, shaking the frame. The girls screamed, scrambling away from the entrance as the wood splintered beneath the force of the blow. "They're breaking in!" Sarah cried, her voice high with terror. Mia's mind raced. They couldn't stay here. Whatever was outside would get through the door any minute. She scanned the room again, her eyes falling on a narrow trapdoor near the back of the shed, half covered by an old burlap sack. "There!" she shouted, pointing toward the trapdoor. "It leads underground!" Riley rushed over and yanked the sack off the trapdoor, revealing a small wooden hatch. Without hesitating, she pulled it open, revealing a set of stone steps leading down into the darkness. "Go!" Mia ordered, pushing Amber toward the opening. "Hurry!" One by one, the girls descended into the darkness, their fear driving them down the narrow steps. The smell of damp earth filled their nostrils as they went deeper, the air growing colder and more suffocating with each step. Mia was the last to climb down, her heart pounding in her chest as she glanced one last time at the door. Another crash reverberated through the shed as the dead pounded against it, the wood beginning to give way. She pulled the trapdoor closed behind her just as the door above finally shattered. The darkness was absolute. Mia felt the cold stone walls pressing in around her as she groped blindly for a foothold on the narrow staircase. The air down here was stale and damp, and the only sound was the rapid breathing of the girls as they stumbled in the pitch black. "Where does this lead?" Riley asked, her voice shaking as they moved deeper into the underground passage. "I don't know," Mia admitted, "but it's better than being up there." They reached the bottom of the stairs, their feet sinking into the cold, wet earth. The passage was narrow and low, forcing them to crouch as they moved forward. Mia felt along the walls, her fingers brushing against something rough and moss-covered. "We have to keep moving," she said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. The passage stretched on, winding through the earth like a maze. Mia could feel the weight of the cemetery above them, as if the dead were pressing down from all sides, waiting for them to make a mistake. Behind them, there was a faint scraping sound, like nails dragging across stone. The dead were still following. "Faster," Mia urged, her heart racing. "We have to go faster." The girls quickened their pace, stumbling through the darkness. The whispers had followed them underground, growing softer but no less chilling. "Stay with us. Forever." But Mia refused to stop. She didn't know where this passage led, or if there was even a way out. All she knew was that they couldn't let the dead catch them. And dawn was still hours away. Chapter 5. Shadows beneath the earth. The air was suffocating down in the tunnel, thick with the smell of rot and damp earth. Every breath Mia took felt as if it were dragging in soil, filling her lungs with decay, a constant reminder of what lay above them. Hillgrove Cemetery, a place meant for the dead that had become their prison. Each of their footsteps echoed sharply against the tunnel walls, breaking the otherwise heavy silence, mingling with the ragged, shallow breaths of the girls as they pressed forward. Behind them, the faint, persistent whispers of the dead lingered, like the cemetery itself was calling them back. Mia's mind raced, trying to make sense of their situation. Where could this tunnel lead? Was it meant to be a refuge? Or had they just stumbled deeper into the cursed heart of this place? Behind her, Amber tripped, catching herself against the cold, damp wall. I can't do this anymore," she gasped, her voice trembling as she struggled to stand. "I can't keep going." "We don't have a choice," Mia replied, her tone firm but gentle. "If we stop, they'll catch up to us." Amber said nothing but didn't argue, her shoulders slumping as she struggled forward, each step unsteady and weak. Ahead, Riley, leading the way, suddenly froze, her arm shooting up in a silent signal to stop. "Wait," she whispered, the word slipping from her lips with a chill. They fell silent, every breath held as they strained to listen. For a moment there was only the faint rustling of their own movement and the distant, echoing whispers from the dead. But then, somewhere ahead, came a new sound. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. A slow, rhythmic dripping, like water hitting stone, each drop echoing in the oppressive silence. "There's something ahead," Riley whispered, her voice barely audible, thick with tension. Mia stepped forward, squinting into the darkness. Her phone's flashlight barely cut through the blackness, the light swallowed up by the thick, heavy shadows. But then she saw it. A faint, glimmering light at the far end of the tunnel, so dim it was barely there, almost as if the darkness itself were swallowing it whole. "We don't have a choice," Mia repeated, her words as much for herself as anyone else, "and we can't go back." They pressed on, moving cautiously as the faint light grew gradually brighter. The sound of dripping water intensified, and with every step Mia took, the whispers behind them grew fainter, as if receding, or waiting. Just as she began to feel a small shred of relief, her stomach twisted with an inexplicable sense of dread. The tunnel opened up into a larger chamber, its walls slick with moisture and shrouded in moss, glistening under the pale, sickly light that filtered down from a small, dirty skylight set high in the ceiling. At the center of the chamber was a large, circular stone well, ancient and crumbling, dark water shimmering in its depths as it rippled with each slow drip from above. Sarah took a step closer to the well, her eyes wide as she whispered, What is this place?" Riley edged closer, peering down into the dark water. "Looks like some kind of reservoir or something. But why here?" Mia's gut twisted with a cold dread. This isn't just a random chamber. Her voice was tight, her instincts warning her that the well wasn't what it seemed. "We shouldn't be here," she added, her hand gripping Amber's arm as she tried to pull her back. "What are you talking about?" Riley asked, frowning as she shot Mia a look. "It's just a well." But the air around them shifted, chilling with an unnatural bite. Mia felt it settle into her bones, sharper and more menacing than the dampness of the tunnel. And then the whispers returned. Faint at first, but unmistakable, swirling through the air like a low, malevolent wind. "Down, down, down." Sarah's face drained of color, and she stumbled back, her eyes wide with terror. Did you hear that?" Riley's confidence faltered as her eyes darted around, searching the shadows. What was that?" The whispers grew louder, more insistent, filling the room with a sound like the rumbling of an ancient, twisted chant. Mia felt her heart hammering as the darkness within the well seemed to expand, the water at its bottom reflecting the light in a strange, distorted way, as if something deep within were watching, waiting. The ground beneath them trembled, a low, rumbling growl shaking the chamber. Small stones broke loose from the ceiling, raining down on them as dust filled the air, thick and suffocating. The water in the well began to ripple violently, disturbed by something far below, something that seemed to wake with the shaking earth. "We need to get out of here," Mia said urgently, grabbing Sarah's arm, pulling her away from the well. "Now!" But as they turned toward the tunnel, a deep, resonant groan filled the air. The ground beneath the well cracked open, and a figure began to rise from the water, tall and skeletal, dripping with rot and decay, its form cloaked in the tatters of burial clothes. Its hollow eyes seemed to lock onto them, empty yet filled with a chilling awareness, and from its open mouth came the same whispering chant. "Come down. Stay with us." Mia screamed, grabbing Amber and Sarah, pulling them toward the far side of the chamber. But Riley stood frozen, her face ashen, her eyes wide as the figure climbed from the well, its bony hand stretching toward her with an unnatural hunger. "Riley, move!" Mia shouted, her voice thick with terror. Riley was rooted to the spot, her face drained of color as the thing moved closer, each jerking, unnatural step creaking as it moved. Just as its skeletal hand reached out, Mia lunged forward, yanking Riley back as the fingers swiped the air where she had stood. They stumbled back, crashing into the far wall, hearts pounding as the dead figure turned toward them, eyes locked with a cruel, unearthly hunger. The whispers rose, swirling around them in an endless chant. "Stay with us. Forever." The girls frantically searched for an exit, but the room seemed to close in around them, the walls closing off any hope of escape. The figure advanced, its movements slow and deliberate, its empty gaze fixed on the two girls. Mia's hands shook as she clutched onto Riley, both of them knowing that they were trapped in a nightmare from which they might never escape. Chapter 6. The Grasp of the Dead. The air grew dense and suffocating, as though the weight of the entire cemetery pressed down on them. Every breath Mia took was thick with the scent of mold and rot, the dampness of the tunnel clinging to her skin. Her heart pounded as her eyes darted around the shadowed chamber, desperately searching for any way out. But the dead thing emerging from the tunnel moved closer, its bony fingers reaching toward them, savoring the fear in their eyes. "Riley, come on," Mia urged, grabbing Riley's arm. But Riley stood paralyzed, her face ashen, eyes locked on the creature as it slowly advanced, moving with a horrible patience. The thing's hollow eyes fixed on Riley, drawn by some invisible force. Its cracked, dried lips moved without sound, releasing only a faint whisper that coiled through the chamber. "Stay. Forever." Amber's sobs filled the small space as she gripped Sarah's arm in terror, her nails digging into Sarah's skin as if she could anchor herself to the living. The air turned colder, and the shadows began creeping outward, as though the very darkness had a life of its own. The floor beneath them trembled, shifting as if the earth itself wanted to swallow them whole. "We have to go back." Mia's voice cracked with desperation as she tugged Riley toward the narrow passageway. "But it's blocked," Riley choked out, her words barely above a whisper, her voice brittle with panic. Mia's own fear sharpened her tone. "We can't stay here." She refused to let this thing, whatever it was, take them. The girls stumbled toward the passage, feet slipping on the cold, damp stone as they scrambled to escape. Behind them, the dead thing let out a guttural, hollow growl, a sound that crawled up Mia's spine and settled like ice in her stomach. It was a sound of pure, ancient hunger, of something that had waited in the shadows for this moment. More shadows poured from the tunnel's edges, skeletal figures dragging themselves forward, each movement unnaturally slow, as though savoring every second. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsing with a faint rhythmic beat that mirrored the evil lurking in the dark. "We're trapped!" Amber's voice rose to a shriek. "We're going to die here!" Mia grabbed her shoulders, forcing Amber to meet her gaze. "No, we're getting out." She pushed Amber and Sarah forward, her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. "Run!" The girls dashed into the tunnel, their footsteps echoing against the stone, the sound mingling with the whispers and the scraping of bone against rock. Mia could feel the cold breath of the dead on her back, bony fingers reaching out, almost brushing against her as she ran. Then, just ahead, she saw it. A faint glimmer of light, a fragile beacon in the darkness. "There, do you see it?" Mia shouted, her voice breathless, pointing ahead. They ran toward the light, adrenaline driving them faster. The whispers rose into a feverish pitch, a chorus of voices calling them back. Mia could feel the dead things just behind, their skeletal fingers nearly grazing her shoulder, reaching to drag her into the dark. The faint light grew brighter as they neared it, revealing an old, warped wooden door at the end of the tunnel. Without a second thought, Mia threw herself against it, slamming her shoulder into the rotting wood. It didn't move. "Help me!" she screamed, her voice strained with terror. Riley, Amber, and Sarah joined her, pressing their weight against the door. It groaned, the ancient wood cracking under their combined force. With one last desperate push, the door splintered and they stumbled through, spilling into a small stone chamber just as skeletal hands clawed at the doorframe. Mia slammed the door shut, her fingers scrambling for the rusted lock. The dead pounded against it, their claws scraping and whispering through the cracks, relentless. What is this place?" Riley gasped, her voice trembling. The chamber was small, damp stone walls rising up around them. A single crack in the ceiling allowed a sliver of light to seep in, illuminating their terrified faces in a ghostly glow. Mia's heart sank as she realized they were trapped. The dead were outside, and dawn was still hours away. "They're going to get through," Amber whispered, her voice barely audible. "We're not going to make it." Mia clenched her fists, her mind racing. They were so close to dawn, but the dead things outside weren't giving up. She could feel their presence pressing in, their whispers coiling through the walls. Chapter 7. The Last Stand. The pounding on the door grew louder, each impact shaking the room and sending shudders through the walls. Every thud fractured more wood, splintering the door and letting frigid air seep into the chamber, carrying with it the stench of decay and soil. The whispers outside rose to a fever pitch, twisted voices layering over one another, pressing in like 1,000 unseen hands clawing to get through. Mia's gaze darted around the chamber, her heart hammering as she searched for anything they could use. The room offered nothing but the damp stone walls, slick and unyielding, and the low ceiling with its thin crack letting in a barely visible sliver of light, a faint promise of dawn. Amber's sobs echoed against the cold walls, her voice tinged with desperation. "We're trapped. This is it. We're going to die here." "No, we're not." Mia's voice cut through the panic, fierce despite her own fear. She reached out, gripping Riley's shoulder and looking into her friend's wide, terror-stricken eyes. "We keep fighting. Together." Riley nodded, but her expression wavered, betraying the cracks in her confidence. Sarah was shaking violently, her arms wrapped around herself, eyes glued to the door as though she couldn't look away. Another brutal blow struck the door, sending chips of wood flying. Mia turned to see a skeletal arm punch through the splintered frame, bony fingers reaching into the room. The skin was shriveled and blackened, stretched taut over thin bone, with yellowed nails that scratched against the stone floor. "Get back!" Mia yelled, grabbing a loose stone from the floor. She swung at the hand, the stone making a sickening crunch as it connected, shattering the wrist. The hand recoiled, but another took its place almost immediately, clawing and scraping, each finger flexing with unnatural eagerness. "Block the door! Use whatever you can find!" Mia shouted. The girls frantically pushed whatever debris they could gather against the door. Loose stones, splintered wood, anything that could slow the relentless advance of the dead. Each time one of the undead broke through, they would push it back, hearts pounding as their makeshift barricade weakened with each blow. Riley gritted her teeth, slamming her weight against the door as it buckled. Her voice was barely a whisper, as if speaking louder might break her resolve. "How much longer until dawn?" Mia cast a glance up at the crack in the ceiling. The faint glow had begun to shift, tinged with the barest hint of morning light. But the promise of dawn felt fragile, a flicker in the oppressive darkness that pressed in around them. "Just a little longer," Mia said, hoping her voice sounded steadier than she felt. She looked at each of the girls in turn, trying to anchor herself with their presence, trying to believe that together they might have a chance. Suddenly, the door buckled under another powerful blow, sending their barricade tumbling backward. 3 skeletal arms reached through, tearing the remaining planks to shreds. One hand grabbed Riley's arm, skeletal fingers digging into her skin. She screamed, pulling back as the creature's grip tightened, drawing blood. "Get it off!" Riley screamed, her voice raw with terror. Mia grabbed a chunk of broken stone and swung, smashing it against the undead hand. The creature's grip loosened, and Riley staggered back, clutching her bleeding arm, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Sarah stood frozen, her eyes wide, her face pale as more undead hands punched through the door, each skeletal finger scratching against the stone, each reaching toward them with an insatiable hunger. Their whispers filled the room, a sickening rhythmic chant that sent chills down Mia's spine. Stay with us. Forever." "Push them back!" Mia yelled, her voice cracking as she fought to keep the panic at bay. She swung the stone again, shattering another hand, but the creatures were relentless. Each hand that recoiled was replaced by another, the dead clawing through the remains of the door with increasing ferocity. Amber let out a strangled cry as one skeletal hand gripped her ankle, its bony fingers digging into her flesh. She kicked frantically, her sobs echoing as she tried to shake it off. Get away from me! Mia lunged forward, smashing the creature's hand, but more arms reached through, clawing their way toward the girls. The room felt smaller, the air thick and suffocating as the dead continued their assault, unyielding in their hunger. "We just need to last until dawn," Mia whispered, but the words felt hollow. The sliver of light above was still so faint, the darkness around them pressing in like an endless night. Then, with a splintering crash, the door gave way completely. The girls staggered back as the undead pushed through the remains of their barricade, skeletal forms dragging themselves forward, their eyes empty but somehow filled with purpose, with a hunger that seemed to seep into the very stone of the chamber. Riley picked up a loose stone, her face twisted in fury and fear as she swung at the nearest creature. "Get back! Stay back!" One of the undead paused, its head cocked, as though it understood her words. Then it lunged, bony fingers stretching toward her with jerking, unnatural movements. Riley screamed, stumbling backward as the creature's fingers brushed against her, cold and clammy, with a touch that felt like death itself. Mia rushed forward, her own fear a burning force as she slammed a stone against the creature's skull, hearing the sickening crunch of bone. It recoiled, hissing as it fell back, but others took its place, moving closer, their whispers blending together in a haunting melody that echoed off the stone walls. "Stay with us. Forever." Amber was backed against the wall, her face streaked with tears, her voice barely a whisper. "This isn't happening. This can't be happening." Mia grabbed her arm, pulling her close. "It is happening, Amber. But we're not giving up. Do you hear me? We're getting out of here." They huddled together, each of them clutching a broken stone or piece of debris as they faced the advancing undead. The skeletal forms moved slowly, methodically, their empty eyes seeming to glow in the faint light. Each step they took brought with it a chilling gust of air, as if death itself were breathing down their necks. Mia cast one more glance upward, her heart pounding as she saw the first hint of morning light filtering through the crack in the ceiling. It was faint, but it was there. A promise that the night was nearly over. "Just hold on," Mia shouted, her voice filled with a desperation that bordered on hysteria. "Dawn is coming. Just a little longer." The weak, flickering light cast eerie shadows across the stone chamber as the dead pressed closer, their skeletal fingers clawing through the weakened door. With a final, tortured groan, the wood gave way, collapsing inward with a thunderous crash. Dirt and stone rained down from above, and part of the tunnel ceiling buckled, sending chunks of debris crashing down, burying some of the undead beneath a mound of rubble. The girls stumbled back, coughing as thick clouds of dust filled the air, but Mia felt a glimmer of hope stir within her. Perhaps the collapse would hold the creatures back, even if only for a few precious seconds. "They're trapped. At least for now," Amber gasped, her voice shaking with relief and disbelief. Mia didn't waste a moment. "We need to move. Now!" The partial collapse had loosened several old bricks along the chamber's rear wall, revealing a narrow, rough-hewn passage sloping upward. Without hesitation, Mia motioned for the others to follow, and she scrambled into the opening, the stone scraping against her skin. Riley went next, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps, followed by Amber and Sarah, each pushing themselves forward with every ounce of strength they had left. The passage was tight and claustrophobic, pressing around them as they climbed. The rough, cold stone scraped against their hands and knees, but they pushed on, too exhausted and terrified to care about the cuts and bruises they accumulated along the way. With every frantic step, the darkness of the tunnel felt heavier, as though it were dragging them back, trying to swallow them whole. Then, as they climbed higher, the air began to change, filling with the faint scent of damp earth mixed with something new, something fresh and clean. It was like the faintest breath of dawn whispering through the stones. The tunnel grew lighter, and as they crawled forward, their breaths grew easier, as if the weight of the cemetery was finally lifting. At last, they reached the mouth of the tunnel. Mia squinted as she raised her head, her eyes adjusting to a world bathed in soft golden light. The first rays of morning stretched across the sky, spilling over the tombstones and casting a warm glow over the ground that had felt like their prison just moments ago. The girls stumbled out into the open air, each of them gasping as they felt the sunlight on their skin, warm and reassuring, a sharp contrast to the cold darkness below. They stood together in silence, letting the light settle over them, feeling its gentle strength seep into their bones, pushing away the chill of the night. But before they could celebrate their escape, a sound echoed from the tunnel behind them, the relentless, shuffling steps of the dead. Mia's stomach twisted as she turned, watching in horror as skeletal hands clawed their way into the sunlight, hollow eyes glinting with unnatural hunger. Even in the light of dawn, the dead seemed determined to drag them back into the darkness. The first zombie dragged itself forward, its skin beginning to sizzle the moment it entered the sunlight, smoke rising from its decayed flesh as it continued to crawl forward, desperate to reach them. The girls backed away, watching with a mixture of horror and fascination as the creature's skin bubbled and blackened under the bright rays. It let out a guttural hiss, its hollow mouth opening in a silent scream as it began to crumble, its bones flaking away like ash in the wind. One by one, more undead appeared at the tunnel's mouth, each one hesitating as they met the sunlight, but each trying to press forward, their desperation stronger than their pain. The dead creatures twisted and writhed, their bodies crumbling into dust under the morning rays, their jaws stretched open in silent, tortured screams. A chilling, guttural hiss filled the air as the last of the undead reached out, its skeletal fingers stretching toward the girls as though in a final act of defiance. But even this creature could not withstand the dawn. Its fingers curled, its bones sizzling as they turned black, and with a final shuddering gasp, it crumbled to the ground, dissolving into ash. The air filled with the sickly smell of decay, mingling with the fresh scent of morning dew. Chapter 8. Dawn's Last Hope. At last, as the sun rose fully over the horizon, the final shadows of the undead disappeared, retreating back into the depths of the cemetery from where they had come. Hillgrove Cemetery, bathed in the warm, soft light of morning, looked hauntingly peaceful now, a stark contrast to the nightmare it had been throughout the night. Mia's legs trembled, her body shaking with exhaustion and disbelief. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the warmth of the sunlight chase away the last traces of the night's terror. The others stood with her, bruised, dirty, and covered in dust, but alive. They were breathing the open air, and it felt like the sweetest gift. "We made it," Mia whispered, her voice trembling with awe. Tears stung her eyes, and she quickly wiped them away, glancing at each of her friends. They were alive, and the realization settled over her like a blanket, warm and reassuring. The girls shared a look, each of them still pale and shaken, but with a spark of relief breaking through. They didn't speak. They couldn't. The terror they had endured was too fresh, too overwhelming, but the silent acknowledgement between them spoke louder than words. They had survived together. The girls breathed a sigh of relief, their hearts pounding in their chests. They knew they had survived the night, but the memory of the horror they had faced would haunt them for years to come. From across the cemetery, the faint rumble of an engine broke the silence. Mia turned to see the white van parked at the edge of the graveyard, its headlights shining through the early morning mist. The senior sisters who had dropped them off stood outside, their faces pale with shock, hands covering their mouths as they watched the girls limp toward them. With shaky steps, Mia led the others across the grass, her eyes darting over each gravestone they passed, half expecting to see skeletal hands reaching out to pull them back. The soft morning light cast long shadows across the cemetery, but everything felt eerily quiet, as though the earth itself were exhaling, releasing them from its grip. The seniors' expressions shifted from curiosity to horror as the girls drew closer, their faces pale, clothes torn, and eyes hollow with exhaustion. Cassidy, who had been so smug and confident the night before, now looked at them as though they'd crawled out of the very graves they'd dared to visit. What happened?" she stammered, her voice losing its usual sharp edge as her gaze darted between their dirt-streaked faces. Seriously, you guys look like crap. Did something happen in there? Mia didn't answer. She couldn't. The memories of the night, the terror they had endured, were too raw, too overwhelming to fit into words. Instead, she walked past Cassidy in silence and climbed into the van, her body moving on instinct. Riley, Amber, and Sarah followed without a word, each of them stumbling into their seats, too drained to even acknowledge the seniors. Cassidy hesitated, still searching their faces for an explanation. "Hey, didn't you hear me? Are you going to tell us what went down, or—" The girls remained silent, their eyes fixed on nothing, breaths heavy with relief, and the fragile, fleeting sense of safety. Each of them sank into their seats, their silence a barrier against the horrors that still lingered in their minds. As the van pulled away, Mia looked back through the rear window, her gaze lingering on Hillgrove Cemetery as it grew smaller and smaller in the distance. The graveyard lay still under the golden light of dawn, the tombstones casting long shadows across the grass. But a chill ran down her spine as she stared. It felt as though the dead were still watching, still waiting in silence. The last glimpse of the cemetery disappeared around the bend, but the feeling of its presence remained, as though some part of it clung to her, whispering in the back of her mind. Mia turned back to the others, seeing the same haunted expressions mirrored on their faces. They had left Hillgrove Cemetery behind, but a part of them was still trapped there, buried among the shadows and silent graves, forever.